Welcome, everyone. I'm John DeBenedictis, the Executive Director for the National Soccer Coaches Association of Canada. We're a volunteer organization. And with us today as a guest, we have the President of Canada Soccer, Nick Bontis. Also acting as our host will be Alf de Blasis, who's experienced soccer broadcaster for CPL and a number of other things, as well as our technical director, Tony LaFerrara, is going to be joining us. So, fellas, I'm going to have you guys take over. Nick, it's been great to see you. And we actually coached each other a little bit while your kids were, you might want to talk about your kids and how well they're doing now. That was, I think the boys were U11 when you and I were coached against each other, and your team was very good and you won. We also have a bit of history through Scarborough, Missouri, where you played for a while. So I'll let Alf take over. Thanks, fellas.
Nick, you mentioned pyramid, and obviously a very integral and essential part of that pyramid is the Canadian Premier League. I'm sure you know, I don't know if some of our viewers know that I've been a play-by-play commentator on CPL games for the past 2 seasons. And I can say that it has been an absolute privilege of mine to have called some memorable games and witnessed some outstanding individual moments over the course of the past 2 seasons. And just 10 days ago, we saw a record-setting attendance mark in Ottawa at a thrilling CPL championship final. And next year, we'll be welcoming a new expansion franchise that'll be based in Greater Vancouver. What has stood out to you about the growth of the CPL and its ability to provide not only our domestic players, but also foreign players with a showcase for their talent?
One word, Alf: resiliency. And that's a very, very important word for us to embrace. And I'll tell you why. You know, I played in the old CNSL. We had the old NSL. We had the whole CSL. We had the whole CPSL. I mean, add every acronym to every professional startup that we created that we then lost, right? I mean, it's a hodgepodge of starts and stops over the decades. But guess what? We started this 4 years ago. And, you know, some owners came around a table with, you know, the sanctioning of Canada Soccer. And you know what, Alf? They survived 2 years of COVID. Do you know how impossible, and I'm going to use the word impossible, how impossible it is for a brand new league to start year 1, and then in year 2, year 3, go through a period where you're not even allowed to play or bring people or sell tickets, and then you come back better than ever in year 4. I was at that game, Atletico Ottawa versus Forge 10 days ago. My Lord, what an amazing experience that was for the fans, for the quality of play. Forge themselves have now created a dynasty that they are now promoting worldwide, at minimum throughout the CONCACAF region. The excitement of Vancouver FC coming to the table. So that's what I've learned. I've learned that this league has resiliency, and that's what I'm most proud of, because the people around the table are very, very committed. Now, Alf, we got to talk brass tacks at the end of the day. It is about dollars, okay? They have deeper pockets than we ever had in those previous generations of the CNSL, the CSL, the CPL, the CPSL. Okay, those were deep pockets, but these are deep, deep pockets. And that's what you need to survive in the professional sports landscape in this country. It's not easy. And exactly the same thing is what I want on the women's side as well. I don't want to venture into a women's professional league without knowing that it's got the foundation to have the resiliency that the CPL has also showed us in the last couple of years. So make no mistake, I am the #1 biggest fan and supporter for women's professional soccer in this country. As a strategy guy, I wrote it in our strategic plan at Canada Soccer. So when it's in the strat plan, that's how you're committed to it. But we got to do it in a smart way. We can't start it and then fail and stop, Alf. Because if we do fail with a women's professional league, it's going to be extremely difficult to ever find all the perfect timing and all the ingredients, right? Our women's Olympic champion, Bev Priestman as coach, the laser focus of 2026 on our country. All these are great variables that we need to combine together to make sure that that women's professional league survives.
Yeah, and talking about that, Nick, Christine Sinclair, just a few weeks ago, I think it was, or it was a while ago, she said that the fact that we don't have a professional league is quite frankly embarrassing. I fear for the future of our women's team. And if we don't have a league because our players get passed by and overlooked, it's scary.
Yeah.
So,
And I agree 100% with Christine. It's embarrassing. I mean, here we are about to go to a World Cup on the men's side. We have our women who are Olympic gold medal champions. If you look at the top, I think it's 8, 9, or 10 ranked FIFA nations on the women's side. All, if not all, have domestic leagues. But let me also point out, Tony, that if you take England as an example, or Italy, or Germany, any of the large European superpowers, you know, they have sporting clubs that are worth billions of dollars. You know, you look at Juve and Inter and Everton and Chelsea and Manchester United and Dortmund and Bayern. You know, so within the umbrella of a Bayern, you know, you've got not just the men's team, the first team, which brings in all the revenue, but you have the reserve team and the U21s and 18s and 17s and 16s and 15s, and you have now the development on the women's side. The challenge for us is we can't just have Toronto FC in its infancy, because I'm going to be honest with you, Toronto FC is still an infant. It's only, what, 15 years old. It's a baby compared to some of these clubs that we've been talking about on the other side of the pond, right? To also now say, hey, we want you to fund everything underneath you, including the reserve team, the 19s, the 17s, and the 15s. But then also you need to start it on the women's side as well. Yes, Toronto FC and Montreal and Vancouver, I believe, will do that, but it's not enough. That's 3. You can't have a league with just 3 clubs. We need to get the CPL involved as well. We need to get League One in Ontario involved, and PLSQ in Quebec involved, and the BC League One equivalent in BC as well. And also maybe community clubs. This is going to have to be a Canadian solution for a Canadian situation. Maybe very, very large clubs in Ontario. And I'm talking about, you know, the Vaughan Azuris of Ontario or the Oakvilles of Ontario. Maybe they also have aspiration to look a little bit higher in their pyramid to also offer financing for a women's professional club. So the answer to your question is this is going to be a very, very unique model, I believe. It's not going to be a model that we've seen before in the US or in Europe, because we don't have the multi-billion-dollar infrastructure that a first team has to be able to fund all these other assets. But, you know, I'm very confident that we will have women's professional soccer in the next couple of years in this country. I'm very, very confident. You know, we hired an individual several months ago at Canada Soccer, Bria Carr-Harris from Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and her job is to spearhead the proposal for how women's professional soccer will launch in this country. And, you know, I'm anticipating her presenting her report to the board of directors probably within the next couple of months. So the timing is right. And I agree with Christine 100%. But I think it's also important for everybody to understand Canada Soccer does not run soccer clubs. Canada Soccer does not run leagues. We don't do that, right? We sanction leagues and we sanction and accredit clubs, right? It's the deep-pocketed investor that actually is the one that will bring women's professional soccer into this country in partnership with a broadcaster, because we're going to need a broadcaster to also devote so we can get, you know, the eyeballs out there in concert with sponsorship. But I can tell you, if those pieces are in place, Canada Soccer will be the first to sanction that professional league right away.
If I can just throw something in, fellas, we got a letter from one of our members, and in fact, this is Sam Kusi out of Ottawa, who, Sam used to, he ran our first convention online before, you know, Zoom and things like that, through the old, I think, Bell phone instead of internet. And he also was editor of our newsletters way back. So Sam has asked a question about girls soccer. I think you've already answered some of them about a professional league, but he seems to be a little bit concerned of what's happening. Our U20s didn't do very well. Our U17s, he said, was embarrassing when they played in India. And what his question is, we need to ramp up the intensity of our training and skill development competition. But first, is there a problem? He wants to know if Soccer Canada realizes there might be a problem there. And that's his rant for now. He said.
No, that's fine. And that's fair. And we're trying to be as transparent and honest. So, you know, one of the responsibilities of a board, a volunteer board and a volunteer president is to optimally allocate scarce resources. What does that mean in simple English? If you got $10 and that's all you got to figure out where's $3 going to go, where's $3 going to go, and where's the remaining $4 going to go. And sometimes you got to make tough choices. And the tough choices that we made in the last couple of years was to make sure that our women's program and our men's program have what they need to get the best performance possible on the field. Now, what was the cost of doing that? The cost of doing that was that we didn't have enough funds left over to provide enough budget to our U20s who were in Honduras on the men's side, and on the women's side, our U17s and our U15s. So that is the reality of the situation. So how do you solve this problem? Well, quite simply, you have two choices. Number one, the $10 can't be $10 anymore. You got to make the $10 $15, right? Because you need to make the same investment that you've done on the first team for the women and the men, and then still have a couple bucks left over to fund for camps on the youth side, right? And the second thing you need to do is be more efficient with the money that you spend. Make sure that when you spend $1, it goes as far as possible. And we're doing that as well on the men's side. You know, we have our MLS clubs who have kindly financed much of the training camps for our youth tournament. So when the U15s or the U17s, before they get together for tournaments, you know, we will have a camp at the facilities of Montreal, or at the facilities of Toronto FC, or in Vancouver, because we can't afford the extra money to bring a camp of players, 30 players from all across the country, to one centralized location. So there's really the two ways that I see us moving forward. First of all, the $10 has got to become 15. We have to get more money. It goes back to this idea of being a $20 million organization. I do not want us to be a $20 million organization anymore. I want us to be a $50 million organization in the next 5 years, and a $100 million organization in the next 10 years. We have to think big. We have to think boldly, because if we don't solve that problem, I mean, guys, you're all coaches on this Zoom call. Do you know that we have 1 million registered players in this country, and that each registered player pays a little bit of money that goes to Canada Soccer? It's about $9. So it's about $9 million. So think about it. If we're a $20 million organization, $9 million of it comes from players themselves. Do you know that we are one of the only federations in the world that actually does that, that actually still collects money from youth players to help finance what it does on the national team side? So there's a lot of work to be done. This is not something that's going to change in the short term. It's going to be something that's going to require some innovative thinking. It's going to require us to be very, very smart commercially in terms of being able to attract eyeballs when it comes to broadcasters and sponsors. And guys, look, everybody on this call loves soccer. I live it, breathe it 24/7. That's all I do. But go outside this door and outside this window, and you're still dealing with a population that would rather watch, no offense, curling on a Friday night on TSN, or baseball on Sportsnet on a Monday night. We still have a massive challenge, because we've got to take our sport and transcend it beyond the people that love it to the rest of the population in this country, especially when it comes to the broadcasters. Because the problem with broadcasting as it comes to soccer is everybody freaks out about soccer every 4 years. And that's it. And then once the 4 years are up, they go back to the Raptors and the Leafs and the Blue Jays and everybody else. So we got lots of competition. What will help is performance on the field. That's what helps. So Christine St. Clair and Atiba Hutchison, they've done their job. Christine helped bring us a gold medal on the Olympic side, on the women's side, and Atiba will do everything in his power to bring us the best experience possible in Doha. What we got to do at Canada Soccer is leverage that performance on the field so that we can transcend and sell to the broadcasters that this is something that should be beyond just what you watch every 4 years. You know, I love it when the Euros are on in Toronto. You put your Greek flag on your car, your Italy flag, your Serbian flag, your Croatian flag. It's wonderful. That's what makes Canada the best country on the damn planet. But what we got to do now is we got to start putting Canadian flags on the side of the car, right? So I encourage everybody to go to Shoppers Drug Mart and Sport Check, because they've all received tons of new inventory all across Canada with flags and scarves and hats and all that kind of stuff, so that we as soccer people can overemphasize how much we love this sport, so that people that aren't soccer people can see and say, what the hell's going on? Why is my neighbor got 4 Canadian flags on his car and a scarf And why is he going crazy in the middle of the day? Oh, it's because he's watching the World Cup, right? But that's the market that we have to tap into.
With the money our federation will see from the next 2 World Cups and hopefully going forward, where do you see the investment going? And he makes a couple of suggestions in terms of creation of regional training centers, which is something that you mentioned previously in terms of what is lacking within the infrastructure, or investments in domestic leagues. How do you see that money eventually being allocated?
Sure. So there are also parts of Canada Soccer that have received very, very limited funding. And what I'm talking specifically about here is futsal, para, and beach soccer, which are all sanctioned soccers within the FIFA family. Even though we have those teams, I can't say that I'm proud of the activity and the programming that they've received. So I would want to, revitalize those programs. I think it's very, very important to revitalize those programs. Having said that, if you were to look at all the things that I've spoken about, a women's professional league is a #1 priority. So more so than I think what we have with our MLS infrastructure and our current CPL infrastructure. That to me is the #1 priority. Any excess funds that we will have coming out of the World Cups will go towards strengthening and stabilizing a women's professional league. That's important. But let me again reiterate and remind everybody, we're not going to launch the league and we're not going to fund the clubs in the league, right? Investors do that. What we can do is solidify the infrastructure surrounding a league. Every league needs referees. Every league needs sanctioning and standards and facilities even, right? That's what we will do as part of Canada Soccer. Now, what do I want to have our partners do? Let's talk about the CPL as an example. The CPL needs expansion, 100%, right? Now, we're going to grow with Vancouver FC, but let's be transparent and honest. Some of the clubs have not been as successful as we would like them to be. So we need to strengthen all the clubs so that even, some of the clubs that we would deem to be the top tier clubs, that delta between the top tier clubs and the clubs that are a little bit lower, that delta needs to shrink so that all of our clubs are healthy. We also need to make sure that Atletico Ottawa is very, 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 very happy. Now, why am I focusing on Atletico Ottawa? I'll tell you why. One of the last things that I did as a formal role as a member of the board of directors of Canada Soccer was, I think the date was March 7th or 8th, I'm trying to remember, 2020. And that was in Ottawa, where we formally welcomed Atletico Madrid as a brand new investor in the CPL. What an amazing event that was. Think about who Atletico Madrid is in the pantheon of clubs around the world. They are legit. They are a big kahuna. And here they are coming to our little country, to our little league that was only a couple of years old at the time, and say, we believe in you. We're going to invest in you. And now we're going to have a club. And Alf, guess what? They made it to the final, right? 10 days ago. What an amazing story and how quickly they did it. Now, why am I telling you that's important? Because at the same time that March the 7th or 8th, 2020 occurred, guess what happened 10 days later? Boom, COVID, pandemic. We were locked down. And when we were locked down, and let's be honest, we've been locked down for about 1.5 years at least. Some people say it was 2 years. All these other clubs around the world that were watching, because people watch what Atletico Madrid does, right? Real watches, Barcelona watches, Bayern, Olympiacos, Manchester United, Chelsea, they all watch. So as we were now opening the curtain to say, hey, here we are, CPL, come on in, that curtain got shut down because of the pandemic. What I want now to occur is for Atletico Madrid to be very happy, which they are, because they did really, really well this season, to go back now and tell their colleagues, and all the conversations that I've had, even with the chairman of Atletico Madrid back in Madrid, Spain, they are extremely happy with the CPL and what we've done so far. And they are telling their contacts to also consider CPL investment. People wonder, what does a president do? That's what I'll be doing in Qatar all day, every day, in meetings, trying to sell Canada to the rest of the world. That's what my job is as president. So I'll be doing it not only for the CPL, but guess what else the chairman of Atletico Madrid wants? And he keeps on asking me every time. He's like, Nick, when is the Women's Professional League ready? We're coming. So that's an amazing thing as well, right? To know that we will have potential international partners to help facilitate some of our domestic partners. You know, I mentioned the MLS clubs and some of the top CPL clubs, and maybe some of the community clubs that will also provide us with the infrastructure for what a women's professional league will be. So to answer your question, yes, futsal, very important. Para, very important. Beach, very important, because we haven't really done a lot of activity with the limited funds in those. Making sure that we continue to invest in the momentum for women's professional soccer. And then our youth teams, right? I am also extremely upset when our U15s or our U17s show up at a CONCACAF event 24 hours before the first game and say, hey, my name's Nick. What's your name? Oh, your name is Roger. Oh, I play in Toronto. Where do you play? Oh, I play in Montreal. Some of our players are meeting each other for the first time. 24 hours or 48 hours before a high-profile tournament like CONCACAF and FIFA. So it's no wonder that some of you are upset at our performance, because we think we may have some of the great players from a technical perspective, from an athletic perspective. And okay, make no mistake, being that you're all coaches on the call, I know everybody's got feedback when it comes to talent identification, because everybody thinks they're an expert in talent identification. I don't even have that conversation. It's not part of my expertise. I'll let the technical people, John and Bev, deal with that. But what I can tell you is we need to have way more youth camps, way more youth camps. There's no way a U15 or a U17 team should be going to a CONCACAF tournament having never played together. If you look at our friends down south in the US, their youth teams meet 3, 4, 6 times. They have camps before they go to their first CONCACAF tournament together. And that's why the continuity of being able to play together as a team, in my opinion, at that age is even more important than the talent ID piece, right? Because the truth about talent ID is everybody has a different trajectory of talent development, right? We have players on the national team who were on the U15 and 17 team, Samuel Piet and others. And then we have players on the national team who were never identified for any of our youth national teams, who came to their own later on in their careers. And that's just soccer. That's the way it works. But what should never happen again, so the question, of course, from Jamie is, where should the money be going? That's where the money should be going as well. So yeah, we're making a decision now to invest in the first team, our women's and our men's program, because we believe the trickle down will be there. I mean, hey, if the men get out of the group in Doha, Qatar, guess what? There's even more prize money that will go to the men, to the women, and to Canada Soccer. So the better they perform, the better it is for everybody in the family. We say thank you first and foremost ahead of time. So I want to thank, obviously, everybody, the organizers. Thank you, Alf. You know, you and I have done a couple of interviews now. It is always a pleasure. You are a gentleman, Alf, and you are a pioneer, man. You were doing things for this sport when we were all just chumps at the time. So credit goes to you, Alf, for the fact that you're still plugging away. I know you're doing your work for the CPL, and obviously I hope that you will continue to do the work for the CPL. And I wait for the day, Alf, that you also do play-by-play and reporting for our first women's professional match.
I'd love to do that.
I'd
absolutely love to do that, Nick. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks very much for your transparency and your honesty through this entire webinar. It's appreciated, I'm sure, and it was certainly a privilege for me. Thanks so much again, Nick, and thanks to all the viewers and the NSCAC members who joined us this afternoon. It was really interesting and really exciting.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
See you guys.